All right, and we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is the first time we've done a live stream in a long time. And what better way to announce a new live stream than with my new branding and with my awesome friend, Rachel. Rachel, thanks so much for joining today. I'm super excited for this.
Same here. Thank you for having me on again.
Absolutely. No, so give everybody a quick update. We just started we just launched my new branding, essentially. Rachel and I worked together over the last few weeks to do this, and she made an amazing, amazing brand for me. We're going to walk through step by step kind of how we went through the process, what we ended up with, and any questions you have about branding, about marketing, those kind of things, and what the difference between those two things is as well, because that's also an important distinction. Jump in the chat, ask questions. We love to respond to you as we're going and talking through this stuff, because it's important to know for business owners, for anyone who really wants to focus on personal brand. And Rachel is the branding boss that you got to ask, because she's awesome. And so with all that, Rachel, I'll let you take it away, and we'll talk through the process we went through to get to the amazing result. I think is amazing, the result we got to. So thank you again.
Yeah, no, it was so fun working together on your brand. I always feel like it's the best when I get to work on brands for people that have a similar vibe to me, like from a nerd to a nerd. I think it was so fun working on your brand. I also feel like it's just such an awesome opportunity when I meet someone really cool to help them showcase their awesomeness in the online space, because I feel like oftentimes it's really hard for us to figure out what's the best way to translate everything that I am into this thing called the internet in a way that makes sense, is cool, and is accessible to people. And that is in some the art of personal branding. So I do have a few slides prepared because of course, this is a very visual heavy thing that we're doing. And I do have a presentation prepared where we get to just go over what personal branding is first to kind of lay the groundwork, leading into showcasing your brand, where we actually get to use it as an example to illustrate some of the points that I share. So I think context is always the most important thing. It kind of lays the groundwork for everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that everyone can see what I'm looking at here. So let me know when you can see it.
There it is.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So I have a brief presentation. We're going to spend most of our time talking about you and your personal brand. But just to kind of lay the groundwork, I feel like it's important for us to explain what personal branding even is, because when I say branding, people, they usually think logo and colors question mark, right? Like people
Right.
don't really know what I mean when I say branding. And then when you add personal branding on top of that, it can add extra confusion. So I'm going to super simplify this just to kind of help people understand what I mean when I say personal brand. And I'm just going to say personal branding is all about being more intentional about the way you're presenting yourself online and creating an online persona that reflects who you are in a way that's, and these are the three pillars we're going to go over: honest, accessible, and most importantly, creative. And I think a lot of people, when they think about personal branding, they think about having social channels that have a bajillion followers and it's about getting rich or famous, clout chasing. There's a lot of that happening because everyone's moving online right now. And I want to very quickly debunk that, where you don't need to have all of those things, all of the followers, the likes, and the engagement to have a personal brand. Because if I were to simplify it, everybody does things online nowadays, and you are responsible for representing yourself regardless of what it is that you do, whether you're networking on LinkedIn, whether you're just interacting with your friends and family on Facebook. You represent yourself online in all of these engagements, and having a personal brand, at least in my opinion, is just about being more intentional in the way that you're curating your profiles and packaging and communicating about yourself online, so that especially when you meet strangers, whether in like a social setting or in a business context, that what you're saying about yourself is actually accurate. Because as we know, on the internet, it's very easy to come off a certain way when in real life, you're actually completely different. So the art of personal branding is just about bridging the gap so that what people see online is basically like a mirror of what you're like in real life. That's basically it in sum. And this is why I feel everybody could benefit from personal branding, because you are all using the internet at this point. If you're watching this live, you are using the internet. And I think but this conversation becomes more and more relevant as we continue to do more things on the internet. So that's my little spiel about personal branding. I'm going to pause here. Did that make sense?
No, I think it makes perfect sense. And I want to highlight something and kind of offer something too. People use the word brand identity. I think that's a good way to categorize it as a brand identity, because everything you described is about your identity, who you want to be online, who you actually are, and getting people to relate to you. When I talk to people about branding, it's like, okay, well, what's your brand online compared to who you actually are? And if those two things are, to your point, if they're incongruent, then people are going to experience you differently online, or when they're talking to you online, than when they meet you in person. I was like, wait, this is not the person I met online. Who the hell is this person? Why are they like, even if you look the same, you can look exactly the same. But if you act totally different, if you're behaving differently, if the way that the things that you claim are your passions or are the things that really light you up online are not the things that light you up in real life, it's like getting catfished. The business perspective, right?
It's true though. And I mean, the more that I do networking online, the more and more that I'm realizing that it's actually a serious problem, especially when you're doing business, because business is built on trust. And when the first touch point you have is not an accurate representation, then obviously we're off on the wrong foot, because I don't know if I can trust anything else that you say about you or your business is true. So it's just about setting the right expectations from the very forefront. But there are ways that we can do that in a way that's fun. It's not all like super serious and transactional. No, it's just about like, well, let's ask the question, well, who am I and what do I want to present to the world? And how do I do that in a way that makes sense to people and is actually fun for me to do? It doesn't have to be this like really scary, heavy exercise, which I think a lot of people tend to think of it as. So we're going to dive in like one level deeper. I'm going to highlight the 3 things that I shared earlier, the pillars I used to call for building a kick-ass personal brand. And I have to share them in a specific order, because it's kind of like one of these things has to come, it has to happen first before any of the other things happen. So it starts with accessibility, and then we talk about honesty, and then lastly, the part that I love talking about the most, which is creativity. So I'm going to dive a little further deep into the first pillar, which is accessibility. And it's basically the question of how easy is it for people to find you and understand what you're about? Because of course, if people can't find you, none of the other things happen. You just don't exist. So the first thing we always have to make sure is it easy for people to find you online? And I have like a few bullet points just to kind of, it's kind of like a rule of thumb that you can run through your own profiles to make sure that you're making yourself available to the people who do want to find you. Because fun fact, people do want to find you. Please stop hiding, guys. Everyone is awesome. I think we all deserve to have a little bit more attention in a good way. So a few of the points that I have is just, as for accessibility, please make sure that you're available on the platforms where people are searching you up. So for all the people who are allergic to social media, I'm going to have to break it to you. A lot of people are probably searching you up on these platforms if they want to connect with you. And if you don't make yourself available, it's going to be hard for them to be able to have that connection with you. So it's, of course, there is an art to showcasing parts of you that you are comfortable with. I'm not saying share your whole life story and everything, all your deepest, darkest secrets, but it's just about making yourself available. So in the case people want to say, hi, hello, it's nice to meet you, they can reach you somewhere. So yeah, do make sure that you're hanging out in the places where people are looking for you online. Another thing that I find is very common is when it comes to your profile settings, oftentimes there is like certain layers that you can put on to allow people who aren't connected with you to view your profile. So I like one example I have is for Instagram. There's a public and private personal setting. And if you want people to be able to connect with you, like if you're in a space where you're networking, you want to welcome new people into your world and into your circle, you want to make sure that your profile setting is set to public. So then when people get onto your profile, it's not just this locked wall. Like they can see a little bit more about you. And if they want to reach out, they have the ability to do so. So that's another accessibility thing. Just make it so that people can reach out to you if that is what you want, of course. The last few things is for your name, please make sure that the name that you introduce yourself with in a networking setting is the same thing as your social handle or as closely tied to it as possible, so that when people do type in your name into the search bar, for example, your name does pop up. This is also another thing that I find it might be kind of like a no duh thing, but it's actually not the case. You'd be super surprised with how creative people can be with their names and how difficult and how deep I have to go into sleuthing mode to find certain people after I meet them at a networking event. Like they use some weird cryptic name. Some people just use like the initial of their last name and their name spelling is completely different. So people can get really creative. It's like they don't want to be found. But if you do, please make sure your name is the same on the platforms and people can search you up. And then lastly, these are just more of like a bonus on top, just for what you say about yourself on your profile, depending on what it is you want to communicate. One question to ask is it easy for people to understand who I am and what I do from the words that I have on my profile? Is this description actually accurate? Or if you want to be super ambiguous, you could just be like a fun nerd who posts cool shit. Like you could do stuff like that too. Whatever you want to say about yourself, but do make sure that what you say about yourself is accurate. And then lastly, if you want people to not just find you on one platform, but all of the other awesome things you have online, do make sure that the links you have in your bio are linked to all of the other places where people can do their research, go down the rabbit hole, get to know you better. Just have every piece that you have online linked together so that regardless of which platform people find you on, they always have access to all of the other places. So that's kind of accessibility. I'm going to pause right here and give you a chance to jump in. And if there's any specific thoughts, you can share them now.
Yeah, so a couple things, and I agree with everything Rachel said so far. I'm going to be a little bit less nice than Rachel is about some of the things she's saying, so just be prepared. Platforms, yes, you have to be on social media. I talk to so many people these days that are like, oh, I don't get any business from social media. I only do word of mouth. That's great if you can do that, and then if you can build a sustainable business based on that, that's phenomenal. Word of mouth is still the best marketing. However, if you're only in one networking group and you're planning on that networking group being the only thing that you get business from, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Because if for whatever reason that networking group goes away, right, because it's something external to yourself, well, guess what? You have nothing to fall back on, because all the people you connect with, yeah, they can still talk to them and connect with them on a regular basis. But that basically at that point, that business conversation, that connection that you have on a weekly basis or a monthly basis goes away. So being able to post on social media, getting a following of some sort, even if it's just your own connections, allows you to push out a message to them on a regular basis that reaches them consistently, and they'll see it. And you can say, hey, I'm changing my business, or hey, I'm adding more services or less services, or I'm doing an event or whatever. If you're not on social media, you're missing out, especially in 2024. Okay, your business, this is 2024. The world is online. Okay, even if you have an in-person business that makes sense, have some kind of presence. Just figure out who your people are and where they are. You don't have to be on every platform. You don't have to be on every platform. All right. People think you have to be on every single platform in the world: LinkedIn, social, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, name another one, and you don't have to be on all of them. Just figure out where your customers are and be on that platform. But going back to what Rachel said, make sure that all these things are the case in every platform you're on. Because if you're not able to be found, if people can't validate who you are, the trust piece is the essential part of know, like, and trust. People talk about know, like, and trust a lot. They have to know you. They have to be able to find you. That's the knowing you part, right? They don't have to like you as much. That's the part people think spend too much time on. If they know you and trust you, they can just medium like you. They don't have to love you. But because if they respect what you're saying, and what you're saying is actually true, and that you're an expert in your field, they don't have to like you. They have to at least respect you. But if you focus on like and forget about the trust part, or forget about the part where they get to find you and know you, well, you're missing the battle. So everything else Richard said, I completely agree with. So please carry on. Sorry.
Absolutely. And that's actually a really good segue into the next pillar that I was going to talk about, which is honesty. It is that trust piece because, okay, let's say we checked off the first box. People are able to find you. And actually, one thing before I move on to this, just to kind of tack on to what you just said about accessibility and the fact that you don't have to be on every platform. it is accurate. And one thing I actually like to encourage people to do is just start small, make it just friends and family. And if you actually switch the gears in your brain to be like, social media is like a marketing platform, I'm like, no, no, no. Where it started off is it's social media. It's a place where you get to do the social thing. Where it started off was like when I was in high school, grade 8. That was when Facebook first became a thing. It was literally a way for me to post up the random shit I was doing with my friends and tag them and be like, hey, you remember that stupid thing we did after school and we got ice cream, but we spilled it and then we started laughing at you because you look like a goof? That was how we started using social media. Or I use it to keep in touch and be nosy about what's happening with my relatives in Hong Kong, right? Like, if we get back into that frame of mind, that's basically what social media is. It's about staying connected with the people that you know. And the beautiful thing is that the people that you know, that circle can expand as you meet more people, as you add more awesome people into the world, as people find you and just really want to be your friend. You know, we make online friends nowadays. That is how your circle expands. But these are all still human beings and they want to have that kind of connection with you. So if we humanize the way that we think about social media, it makes this a lot easier and a lot more palatable for the people who are like, I'm freaking allergic to this stuff. I don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So just wanted to add that before we move on to this.
And I'm gonna just let you gloss over the fact that you said you're in 8th grade when Facebook came out. I'm not gonna address that because that just makes me feel old as shit. So carry on.
Don't worry, we all experienced the internet at the same time, just at different phases of our lives. But for me, yeah, grade 8 was when Facebook first became a thing.
You don't have to repeat it. It's okay. It hurt the first time enough. That's cool. Carry on.
And now here we are. So funny. Okay, let's talk about honesty. So let's say people find you online and now they're starting to do the thing that I call professional stalking, not in a creepy way, but just they're curious. They want to learn more. And the first question that they usually have is, who the hell are you? They're trying to answer this question. They're going to binge through your content. They're going to go through your links. They're going to do all of the things to get a feel for who you are and what you're about. And when it comes to the second pillar, it's basically the question of, is it clear that you are who you say you are? Because when it comes to internet, it's very easy to do the opposite. It's very easy to post up a picture of yourself that's super airbrushed, super photoshopped, and you on a beach, you know, saying, wow, how great life is, when on the back end, like, your life is in the shitter. You're depressed, you're anxious, nobody likes you, and you're completely alone. It's very easy to put out an impression that isn't actually accurate. And I think the more time people spend in the online space, the more we're realizing there's a lot of bullshit out there and we are tired of it, for the lack of a better way of saying it. So when it comes to honesty, I actually just have a few bullets. These are very high level, but just a few things for you to run through when it comes to your own online presence. So the first one I always have to highlight is your profile picture. Do you actually look like the profile picture that you have on your social channels? Or is it like the best photo ever of you on your brother's wedding day and you are super glammed up, when in real life you look completely different from that? I'm not saying don't look pretty in your profile picture, but have it be an accurate representation. So when you hop onto a Zoom or when you meet people in person, there isn't that big shock when you just get catfished, when you meet people and you have this half second where you're like, is this the right person? Like, I have that happen to me all the time. I network all day long, and I there are some moments where I have a half second of like, oh, like, sorry, did I go in the wrong Zoom room? Did I click the wrong link? Am I talking to the wrong person? That half second actually makes a really big difference. And even though it's not a deal breaker, you don't want that to be the first interaction that you have with people, for you or the other way around. So please make sure that your profile picture is a good reflection of what you're like. The other two things are, when it comes to your vibe, this is more of an intangible thing, but can people just feel what your personality is like based on what they see online through what you use with your words and visuals? Like, I've had this interesting thing happened to me before, where I do my research on somebody before I meet them on Zoom, and on their social media or on their website, they've got this like really cool, casual, fun tone. And I'm expecting that same attitude when I meet them on Zoom. But when I meet them on Zoom, there's a lot of people who are completely deadpan, no personality, no expression. I don't want to say dead inside, but I can't feel them. And it was a completely misalignment based on what I saw online, probably because they hired a copywriter to make them sound fun on their website when in real life, that's not how they talk. That's not how they emote. So that's more of an intangible thing, but overall vibe. Is your shit online the same as how you are actually in real life? And another bullet point to tack onto that is, yeah, for your content, is it clear from your content that you drink your own Kool-Aid as a professional? So I would not purchase website design services from a website designer who has a really bad website. Just as an example, is it clear that you drink your own Kool-Aid? Are you a life coach, but all of your social content is you doing a lot of questionable things that other people would deem as bad habits? Are you showing that you're living the lifestyle that you are helping other people achieve? Or a personal trainer that stays up all night and eats snacks and chips and sleeps at like 3 a.m. every day watching Netflix? I wouldn't hire them to be my
I feel
personal
attacked
trainer.
right now.
So
I feel a little bit attacked. Just saying.
I'm not saying that we have to be perfect, but we should do our best to showcase that we're getting better and we do believe in the things that we are helping other people with. Because otherwise, if there's a complete misalignment, then people would question, why would I hire you to help me with this thing when you are also doing a lot of those things that I'm struggling with right now? Not saying we have to be perfect, but you need to showcase that you're working on getting better at those things every day. Intentionality does matter. So that is honesty. I just have a few bullet points for that, but I really think that this is important because in the online space, it's hard to come by nowadays.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, it's even hard to come by and sometimes in real spaces too. I remember hiring a personal trainer one time back when I was, and I've always had challenges with belly fat, right? Like the waist area is always my big challenge, and that's more about diet anyway. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
The point is, I had a personal trainer because I'm like, hey, I want to work through this and really get better. And he was like, we talked in email. He sounded like he was talking about. I was like, yeah, come in the gym. We'll meet. We'll talk. I'm like, all right, cool. So I came to the place, met the guy. This guy had a bigger belly than I had. He had huge arms. He had huge arms. Yeah. But his belly was bigger than mine. I'm like, dude, how are you gonna help me? Like, why?
Oh,
what? No, this is not. That's a great example of personal branding done wrong, right? And that is part of that conversation too, because it's like you're representing that you can do this thing, but it's like physician heal thyself, you know. Like you have to be able to do some stuff. You don't have to be perfect. To your point, it's not about being perfect. It's about like, hey, how are you doing the thing that makes sense, that you're telling people to do? Are you, like you said, drinking your own Kool-Aid? And if you're not, well, then there's got to be a reason why, or at least talk through that, at least address that up front. It's like, hey, I went through my own situation and now I'm kind of recovering from that. So I'm going to, I've done it before and I'm going to do it again, or something to explain that concept and that idea that why are you not living the life, or apparently living the life that you're claiming you should have other people do. There's always that idea, like the teacher teaches something and they can't do it themselves. They have to demonstrate that they can do it first before you learn from them. Otherwise, why am I learning from this person, right?
Exactly. One thing that I like to say is that we are all our very first client. And for me, I didn't start personal branding because I suddenly had this idea of, oh, it would be so cool to help people with personal branding. It was actually born out of a long period of discomfort where I wasn't happy with the way that I was showing up online. I had this big polished professional business brand. I didn't show my face on the internet. I was semi-corporate, semi-professional about everything. And obviously you see the way that I am, that feels misaligned. But I did that because I felt like that was the only way that I could do business. But obviously when you feel this weird tension in the way that you show up and the way that you are, it becomes unsustainable over a period of time. And I totally shut down my own marketing because I just felt so bad about showing up. I literally felt like I was lying to people. And it wasn't until I made the decision to switch over to my personal brand and kind of went through my whole process for the first time. It wasn't until then that I realized, like, holy shit, I think a lot of people could really benefit from this. What would it look like for me to really just focus on helping other people in this area? Because I looked around and I saw everyone else was clearly struggling with the same thing. No one was happy with the way they were showing up online, and everyone called it a necessary evil to be on social media, to present themselves. And everyone was just grumbling and unhappy about it. I'm like, shouldn't we make it fun if we're going to do this forever for a living? why don't we do this in a way that feels good for us and also gets us results? So that's kind of how I segued into it. And for the people who followed me for some time, my brand has gone through so many evolutions. So in the beginning, you could say that it was like the baby infant version. And then every few months or every year that I do this, it grows and it matures. And it's part of the showing that you drink your own Kool-Aid. You don't start off perfect, but you show up consistently doing the thing every day and bringing people on the journey with you. And you know what? The people who become your clients are the people who are just a few steps behind you on that journey. So you could confidently say, okay, I've been there. I've checked off those boxes. I can help you with the same steps that I went on myself. So to your point, I totally agree.
Yeah.
All right, last pillar, creativity. And I think this is the one that people struggle the most with because this is the one where there is no right answer. In the words of SpongeBob, imagination is how you're going to make your brand really stand out. And this is the question of, are you presenting yourself in a way that makes it easy for people to remember you? And this is hard because there are a lot of people who are like, I'm just a boring person. There's nothing special about me. You know, like there's a lot of people who would say that about themselves, but I would actually disagree. Even the seemingly most boringest, boringest of people all have a personality. If you have people in your life who love you and accept you for who you are, friends, family, pets, whatever, then you are an interesting person. And there are some lovable, awesome, redeemable qualities about you that I think you should pay more attention to and find opportunities to highlight. And when it comes to creativity, that's basically the art of it. It's about finding those parts of you that make you memorable and really turn up the volume on that and really amplify it. So when it comes to, for example, my brand, one of the things is I love cats. I just happen to be obsessed with them. I am a happy fur baby mama, and I have somehow found a way to incorporate a lot of cat stuff into everything it is that I do. I have cat headphones. My logo is a cat. I actually printed out like a 3D, well, the camera's here, like a 3D version of my logo that I have on my water bottle. Like it's just cat stuff is a thing, and it's a theme clearly from my slides and everything. It's just a theme. And somehow that sticks in people's brains every time like I hop onto Zoom calls. It's like, hey, it's the cat headphone girl. Like people know me for that. So every person has a thing, and it's important to know to figure out what that thing is for you so that people can remember you long after they you're off of that Zoom call, long after they get off of your website. Another two things that I think is good for us to just pay some attention to is relatability and style. So I feel like we're in a day and age where people are searching for connection. And when they see someone online that has something that they want or is going through something that is very similar to the struggle you're going through or whatever, me too, whatever they see that elicits that, oh my God, me too reaction, that is how people really latch on to your brand and they feel incentivized to kind of follow along on your journey. So, being more open just about who you are and some of the things in your life, it allows for you to make your brand relatable and memorable because people feel emotionally connected to you. And lastly, when it comes to style, this is kind of the part where we're going to dive into for your personal brand is your content done in a way that looks or feels different? And this is the scary thing where people are like, I don't know how to do that for myself. And the sky's the limit when it comes to the colors you use, your style, your vibe. This is where you get to play and have fun because believe it or not, everybody has a taste in style. Everybody kind of puts themselves out there a little differently. If you say that you don't have a sense of style, it's probably just because you haven't spent time thinking about it. But we all put conscious thought into what we pull out of the wardrobe. We all put conscious thought into the way that we carry ourselves and express ourselves. There's always conscious thought that's put into it. And the more that you understand what your preferences are, the easier it is to figure out how to translate that into the online space. So that is basically an overview of creativity. I'm going to do like a very quick recap, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about Drew's brand. So just a quick recap. personal branding is not about clout chasing or getting rich and famous. You can, if that is the direction you wish to go in, but it starts with being more intentional about the way you're presenting yourself online. There are three main pillars for you to consider when it comes to building a kick-ass personal brand. And the first thing is accessibility. Let's make sure people can find you. Honesty, making sure that what you're putting out there is an actual accurate representation of who you are. And then lastly, creative, because you want people to remember you after they get off of your social profiles. And lastly, just a benefit of doing personal branding right is that it really allows you to expand your reach. It allows you to attract better opportunities your way. And most importantly, I say, like, above all, it's so important that you feel good about the way you're presenting yourself online. Because if you don't feel good and if it's not fun, then why the hell are you doing it? Right? If you're going to do it, you might as well make it a good experience. So, that is the conclusion of my presentation. We're going to get into the fun part where we talk about your brand, but I wanted to pause here and see if there's anything you wanted to add before we kind of jump in.
Yeah, no, about the creativity piece. I mean, totally agree with what you said, right? But the creativity piece, I think that's something that people tend to get hung up on, right? I mean, they get hung up on every level of certain things, but that's the part where people can get stuck. And it's like, okay, well, what's okay for me to do? What's not okay for me? Well, what part of my identity can I actually express? And to your point, it's like, look, really, you can express any part of your identity. At the end of the day, whatever resonates with you is going to resonate with somebody else, and those are your people. Those are the people you want to attract to your brand. You know, I've been in Zoom calls with you where it's like, oh, Rachel's here. How do I know? I haven't looked at the screen. I haven't looked at your name, but I see the pink. I see the headphones. I know that's you. And in an online world, especially when you're networking all the time, when you're on Zoom in a sea of squares, being able to stand out is essential, right? It makes a huge difference. And there's studies showing that you have to see a brand at least 7 times before you're aware of it, before you actually start recognizing that brand. And once you see that person, though, a couple times, it's easier just to recognize that brand when it stands out more. And that's the value of having that creative brand, the brand that's more about you and more different than other people are doing it. Do you want to be just another black suit or blue suit at the end of the day, or do you just blend into the crowd, or do you want to be that yellow umbrella? You know, How I Met Your Mother reference, right? But it's like one of those things where it's like, who are you at the end of the day, and how do you stand out from the rest of people? In the sea of coaches, I want it to be different, right? In the sea of branding people, you want it to be different, and in the sea of whatever field or whatever industry you're in out there, people listening, people watching, that's an important distinction you got to just make for yourself, is how do you want to be different? How do you want to stand out from the crowd and be you, as opposed to being just another designer, just another coach, just another financial planner, just another whatever it is out there? And there's many ways to do that. There's not a wrong, to your point earlier, there's no wrong way to do that. It's really about what resonates with you. And a quick story about branding and about marketing. Branding informs marketing. They're not the same. They're related, but they're not the same, right? If you have a strong brand, it's easier to do good marketing, because your marketing is going to have a theme. It's going to have your branding attached to it, so that before they even see what you calling yourself out, they'll see a color like, this feels really familiar. This feels a certain way. I did this for my videos that I did a while ago, right? Like, I have a loose brand at this point before you did this rebrand, and I made these videos, and I applied this template. I didn't realize the template was already applied, and I'm like, it looks really familiar. Oh wait, that's my brand. Okay, that makes sense. And it was really interesting because it was so funny. It was like just a weird, macro whatever moment, what's meta moment. That's what it was. Where I was like, oh wait, that's my brand. Okay, cool. That's really interesting. So, but that happens though. People recognize stuff before they even see that this is this person's brand. And if you don't invest the time and energy to really put in that work to define yourself and define what creative looks like for you, you're going to be stuck in the sea of just crowds of people. So carry on.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that was great, actually. And what's funny is that when you actually take the time to establish what feels like you, it actually makes your shopping decisions so much easier. Like, honestly, every time it's gotten to the point for me with my brand, whenever people see anything black and pink, sometimes I would just have people randomly message me to say, hey, Rachel, I saw a pair of black and pink shoes at the store today, and it made me think of you. Like, complete random people that I just meet one off for networking. Like, I literally have, like, I could pull out a bunch of things that I have close to my desk, and you would say, oh yeah, that's like a Rachel thing. It's like a black and red hat. I've got like a black and pink black and pink water bottle. Even my like AirPods case, it's like pink and it's got this cute little dino attached to it. Like people see these things and they're like, oh yeah, that's totally like Rachel's thing. So I feel like it's cool because it's almost like this snowball effect of once you figure out what feels good for and in line when it comes to you expressing yourself, and the more that you lean further into it, you'll automatically start finding themes of the things that you wear, themes in the things that you purchase, and your brand just kind of grows and snowballs into this really big thing that people can instantly recognize on the outside. So it's just a fun exercise because the more that you lean into it, it's almost like a good tool for self-reflection for you to be like, oh yeah, like I realized that I really resonate with this stuff because, and then you can actually like learn a lot about yourself as you're in the process of doing this. So I'm excited to talk about your brand because I know I've got like a whole bunch of slides to present, but I am very curious to see what the experience was like on your end as we were working on your brand. And actually, one question that I had before I even show any of the stuff was, before we started talking, before you reached out and was like, hey, like about the personal branding, we should talk about that. I know that there's a period of marinating that happens before you go talk to a professional about getting help for it. So I want to hear about this because I actually have no idea. Before we started talking about your personal brand, what instigated the thought of like, hey, I want to put some more energy into building my personal brand? Or what was that thought process like? What kind of led up to our conversation? Because this is like the prequel to the actual thing we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, we didn't practice this, but this is totally off the cuff because we didn't talk about this beforehand. So that's a good question. I got to think about that for a second. I haven't actually thought about what was the precursor mentally to me deciding to do this, but I think wanting to have more of a cohesive look and feel to my content and to what I'm putting out there, and not just my content online, but also the in-person stuff that I'm doing as well, right? Because I am doing some in-person programs. I'm doing the retreat in Japan. I'm doing a lot of work with Hachi Media and things like that. Like we're trying to do a lot more across the board, more, I guess, a breadth of things as opposed to just kind of going deep on one thing. And we're going deep on everything, frankly, which is, always fun. But having that cohesion across the brands to be able to say like, yeah, this is my brand, this is what I'm working on, and this is something that I want people to respect as quality, and that they know that if I'm attached to it, then it's done right. That's something that I wanted to really drive home, and that was something that I wanted to know, and I wanted to also create a brand that was, like I said, the cohesion also allows people to understand that, when I'm involved in something that I put my all into it, and that I really want to be quality. And so they associate those colors, they associate that look and feel with me and with that brand and with whatever it is I'm working on. So that was kind of the thought process, a very loose, high level thought process that I went through. There's probably more in there as well, but as I come on, like I said, I haven't thought about this before, so it's a good question.
Yeah, no, I totally put you on the spot with that, but I was curious because I know what we're going to be diving into is we're going to be showcasing the work that we did, and this is all the forward facing stuff. But as we know with personal branding, it's kind of like a mirror. There is all the fluffy stuff that people see on the outside, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that happens on the back end internally for you that I'm really curious to capture in this conversation. So there might be parts of this that I might pepper in and be like, hey, so volleying it back to you, I want to hear about what the experience was like. But yeah.
No, that works. And one more thing to think about too, that I just remembered that I definitely thought about, was I wanted to inject more of my nerdiness into my work, honestly, for lack of a better term, because it just feels more authentic for me too, because I am a nerd, and that is part of my personal brand in my head, my identity. So I think that's the other part of it that I want to say, going back to what you said earlier. But branding is like an expression of identity. So it's the internal work on identity that I do a lot of, and my coaching is like helping people with identity on the internal and on the internal dialogue side of things, internal validation, all that kind of stuff is the precursor, or like kind of a parallel work that you could do with branding. Because once you understand internally more of your identity, who you are, and what parts of yourself matter most, what the values are that are most important to you, what your passions are, well, now you can focus on your branding, because you'll create a much more cohesive and authentic brand for yourself to express that to everybody else and to get everyone to relate to that. And that's the other thing too. I think that I wanted to lean in more to that nerd side of myself. And I mean, for lack of a better term, I want to get people to be polarized, to say, I identify with that or I don't. And if they don't, that's okay. But then you're not the right client for me. If you do, then we'll resonate really well and we'll be better, work better together. And I want that polarization because it takes care of my energy better without me having to do a whole lot.
Yes, fellow nerds unite. That's like the whole thing that goes on in my brain whenever I meet somebody where they're like, I want to find a way to incorporate this little thing or my favorite fandom into my brand. And my inner nerd screams every time I hear that. Like one of my other clients is completely obsessed with dragons, huge Game of Thrones fan, and everything about her brand. She's like, I want to find a way to incorporate like dragon glass and dragons and all of these things. And I'm like, yes, give it to me. Like, let's make that happen. So when we started working together, my inner nerd was screaming too, because there's just so much that we can play with, knowing that this is also an area of passion for me too. So without further ado, I think we're ready to move on to the next slide where or sorry, this side. This is where it is. This is just a title slide to kind of showcase what it is that we were talking about. These are the two logos that we actually ended up creating for Drew's brand. One for his personal brand, the other one is for the Ronin community, which is, I guess we could call it one of your sub brands. It's going to be a community that is under your brand, which is why the style is very similar, but it is one of the many ways that you support the people in your world. So I'm excited to really dig into everything that we did today. And before we go into a lot of the eye candy, I actually have a few slides where we go over even just the big umbrella. It's like, let's talk about what is this identity that you wanted to put out there before we kind of walk through some of the design decisions that we made in building your style. So when it comes to your personal brand, I know one of the biggest points of struggle that we really had to figure out in the beginning was like, you do a lot of stuff. For the lack of a better way to say it, you do a lot of things and you help people in so many different ways. It was really challenging to figure out how we can capture that into a neat little bundle and communicate that in a way that people understand without it minus word vomit, right? Because sometimes if you have half an hour, okay, maybe we can help people get a full picture of what it is that you're about. But I think one of the things that we started our exploration with was just to be like, all right, let's get clear on what do you want people to know you as? And I want to hear from your side as we were kind of diving into it. What did it feel like on your end as you were kind of like, you had a lot of things you wanted to share about yourself, and what was that process like as we kind of dove in and we were like, all right, let's take all of these amazing things and put them into neat little boxes just so we can see from an organizational standpoint what belongs where, and it's not like everything everywhere, it's just these neat little boxes. So what was that experience like for you, coming in with like everything is everywhere to like starting to find some like order to the chaos?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I'll be honest, it was frustrating. Not you weren't working with you was great, but it was like frustrating for me because I was like, the big part was the coach part, honestly, because the term coach has been, I'll be fully transparent here. The term coach has been bastardized and tainted with a lot of idiots, frankly, for lack of a better term. And I'm saying this publicly. Yeah. Come at me. I don't care. It's true, right? There's a lot of idiots online who are claiming to be coaches who are not coaches. And frankly, I don't think that they're all idiots. I think that they mean well, but they don't know what the hell they're doing. And they've been sold a lie, idiots. Right? Yeah, they're lovable idiots. They've been sold a lie, right? They've been sold a lie that anybody can be a coach at any point in time. If you quit your job tomorrow, you can decide tomorrow that, hey, I'm going to be a coach. There's no regulation in the field, so anybody can be a coach. It's just not true. Anyone can do coaching. Yes, you can do coaching in the moment, but that doesn't make you a coach. Just like you can sprint really fast for 30 seconds. It doesn't make you a sprinter, right? And so it's one of those things where I don't hate the term, but I hate what it's become and what it's become equated with. And so trying to separate myself from that space was important. Ultimately, we landed on a coach term, which I actually like I said, because of the context to it. It's integrated leadership coach. That process was painful though, I mean, you remember that. We were like struggling for like 30 minutes. Like, what do we do? How do we get this?
Yeah.
And then we had to break. And then you were like, okay, we're out of time today, but I'll get something. I'll work something together and put it out. And then we met again the second time, and you're like, here's what I got. What do you think? And we tool a little bit, but it was a tough process. And everything we said before right now still stands, but it doesn't mean it's easy, right? It's easy to say all those things, but it's difficult to execute it and to really come up with your brand identity in a way that's truly captures what you are. And I think the way you broke it down was great. The formal and the casual way, the concept of the integrated leadership coach, speaker, and serial creator. That's like the LinkedIn headline, right? That's where that goes, and everyone can know what that is. And if they're curious, they can reach out to me. But then the one that I like a lot more and kind of identify with, but people wouldn't necessarily understand as well, is the Shisho, right? And understanding the idea of Shisho being like a life guide, so to speak, in Japanese. Someone who you respect and look at in terms of saying, like, this is a person that I'm going to look to for guidance. That's more of what I do anyway. I mean, I wouldn't say I guide in terms of advice, but I guide in terms of questions. Like, I'll lead you to different things and show you around and around your own mind, around your internal side of things, and then we'll explore it together. And then you decide what you want to do with that information. That's much more of the space where, and again, that distinction is important because people can relate to both of them different ways and different levels. And so that process was painful though, because it just getting to a place, a title that made sense and it was succinct enough that wasn't word vomit was so tough. It was a lot easier with the Ronin community because I knew what that was, right? I knew what I wanted it to be, and it's a singular thing, right? And to your point earlier, I do so many different things. Distilling that down was fun. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I find that it's what we call ourselves. It's so deceptively simple. It's like, come up with 2 words that describe what you do. I'm like, it's not that simple, man. Like, the English language there are only a certain number of words that we can choose from that kind of sort of describe what it is that you do, but it's almost like playing Jenga, where you have to put together the right words in the right combination while also understanding that different people have different relationships with words. So like you said, a lot of people are literally allergic to the word coach. The moment they say you, or they hear you say I'm a coach, they hightail it and run the other way. They're like, oh fuck no, like, oh no, not another one. Like, don't try to sell me on your coaching. Like, people hightail it out of there because there are oftentimes people who've had bad experience with coaches, for example. They somehow in their brain, when you say that you're a coach, they lump you in with all of those other people that they might have had a bad experience with. And it's unfortunate, but we do just have to work with the limitations of the language that we use to speak and communicate about ourselves. But this is where we get to do the creativity piece. We get to, use a thesaurus, ChatGPT it. Let's come up with different creative ways that we can capture what it is that you do. And at the end of the day, for the titles, it's just kind of like an umbrella term. It's like the few words that you say that allow people to kind of at a glance kind of sort of understand what you do, but then ask questions to learn more. It's not meant to say and capture everything. It's just enough to get people curious to lean in and do the digging and go down the rabbit hole. So yeah, it was fun working with you to come up with these titles. Definitely, it's a challenging process. And these are titles, they'll evolve over time as well. This is just like a snapshot of where you are at this point in time. This might change in a few weeks as you grow as a human being, as you discover new parts of yourself. But that's the beautiful thing about personal brands, where if you don't like it when things stay static, the beautiful part of a personal brand is that it's always growing. It's always evolving. And God forbid that it stays the same, because that means you're not growing. And that is a whole separate issue that, well, if you need help with that, Drew is the person to help you with that. But yes, it's supposed to grow. It's supposed to change and evolve. And if it's static, something's wrong and you should get that checked. So
and talk about a field where you want to stand out, right? In the crowd, it's like coaching is one of those fields. Marketing is another one of those fields. There's so many fields out there where you've got to stand out from the crowd, and because the crowd is just so monotonous a lot of times, and it's not really, it's hard for people to relate to something, to know who to choose. I've had this question a lot. How do you know which coach to choose? I tell people fit. It's ultimately fit. That's the difference you got to look for. But people who don't express themselves authentically, you're never going to know if you're going to fit with them or not, right? You can never assess fit if people aren't being authentic with you. If they're giving you the same spiel the next person gave you, if there's reading a script, well, then if 5 people are reading the same script, you can't even know what distinguishes one from the other. What are you going to do?
Exactly. It's just about finding creative ways to showcase your difference, which I want to emphasize is already there. Every person is already naturally different. I think where people fall short is that they haven't found a good way to express that difference so that it's apparent on the outside why it is that you are or aren't the right fit for somebody. So the next slide that I have is just a snapshot of the taglines that we came up for you and the Ronin community. And what I like about taglines is that it's also the art of finding just a few words that succinctly capture everything it is that your brand is about. It's not necessarily what it is that you do. It's not like a literal statement of True helps you with XYZ. It's very much just like a sentence that captures the overall attitude or intention behind everything that you do. And I'm pretty happy with what we settled with. It took a while to kind of figure it out, but I want to hear your thoughts around how you feel around, I think specifically like the statement that we created for your personal brand, and maybe what you're excited about when it comes to like embodying or like stepping into this actual tagline, because I know this is like all this is fresh off the press right now, so
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear how you feel about it. I know you're going to grow into it and this will also evolve, but just at this snapshot in time, like how you feeling with what we've created?
I love it, honestly. I mean, like I think when we landed on these two, especially the first one, honestly, especially the personal brand one, I think that's really the one that I was like, wow, that's exactly what I want, because it encapsulates what I believe and how I coach and how I work with people on all different levels in a very short and 4 words, right? Um, Change starts within you. That's really the crux of everything. And everything I preach or talk to or address people, advise when I advise, or consult when I consult, or coach when I coach, everything comes from the mindset that I bring to the table. And I always preach mindset. I talk about mindset a lot. This is all talking about mindset. Everything starts within you. Change starts within you. You have to change to grow, and that change has to start internally. If you're looking at external stuff to change from, well, then you're looking in the wrong place, because you're not going to find authentic change externally, right? You're not going to find change that actually matters for you externally. It has to come from within you. So I absolutely love that. And then the walking alone together with the Ronin community, that was really what encapsulates the Ronin community. The Ronin idea is we're all samurais without a master. We're all out there doing our work, mercenaries, so to speak. We all each have our specialties, focusing on different things. You know, business owners are Ronin. We're out there fighting for our survival, for our livelihood, and the community, being able to have that community to fall back on to say, hey, I'm having trouble with this, or hey, I need branding help, or hey, I need marketing help in this space. I need some advice on this, or hey, I put this out there. I want to iterate on it. Having that community to lean back on is really something I think the business owners could benefit from. And they're all, the idea being that it's a group of qualified, vetted professionals, vetted business people who know what they're doing. These are skilled Ronin. They've survived. They've lived through the battles. They have the scars to show it, and they're ready to help everyone else. And that's why I love the walking alone together, because we're ultimately still walking our own paths, but we're communicating, we're supporting each other as we walk our own paths.
Yes. Yeah, it was so fun coming up with a succinct way to communicate everything that your personal brand is about, as well as the Ronin community. And one thing I do want to emphasize, even with taglines, is it's kind of like Nike's Just Do It, or for Staples, like that was easy. It's meant to kind of capture the overall vibe or sentiment. And I think it's important that every person figures out what their tagline is, or just a succinct way of capturing what they're about, because it helps people kind of catch a vibe and know if you are or aren't the right fit, because it speaks to what it is that you believe in, what you're about, and the way that you deliver it, and the attitude and tone that also captures what the experience is like of working together with you. So kind of tagging on top of the tagline, the last slide that I have before we dive into eye candy is just talking about what is your brand here to do, because I feel like one thing that is often missing, and I think is a huge topic of discussion, is people talk about their why a lot. And for a lot of companies, especially even for business brands, they're starting to realize that it matters to people why you are doing the thing that you're doing. For a lot of, especially really big companies and corporations, they're like, our mission here is to XYZ. Here's what we believe in, because we're not just here to make money. Yes, we need money to survive, but outside of that, people like to know that the people that they work with, the companies that they support or whatever, their involvement with them is working towards a bigger goal. We all like to align with things or people or values that are very similar and in line with ours. So I wanted to give you space to kind of share a little bit about just overall what it is that you really want to be doing, with you as a human being, with your multiple businesses, all of that. Like, just share a little bit about what it is what's the big mission that you really want to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this one a lot because it resonates with me in so many ways. I want to see a change in the world, especially in mindset. Every single challenge we have in this country, and I really mean every single challenge in this country, but in the world, right? Ultimately, it can come down to mindset, because people have different mindsets and never actually express that. They never actually understand for themselves what their actual goals are, and are they actually aligned with what they truly say that they want versus what they're actually getting out of it. You don't take time to clarify that, you're never going to actually get to where you want to get to. And so instilling that stronger mindset in the million people around the world, the million number is a big number, but not really if you look at the billions of people on the planet. And the fact that social media is there, we have the ability to reach millions of people at any given time, assuming that the algorithm work in our favor, right? It's like, instead of saying may the odds be in your favor, may the algorithm be in your favor today. Yeah, that's really what it is. But it's something that I want people to understand. The million number doesn't matter as much as the second part of it, which is that people need to understand the change starts within them. It's easy to complain. It's easy to criticize. It's easy to say, oh, that person messed up. That person messed up. Ha ha ha, look at that, person, whatever. To make fun of people, that's great. But what are you doing differently? How are you changing other than just sitting back on the sidelines and calling out people, right? It's the man in the arena idea, right? And I don't know, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a concept where it's like, it's easy to criticize the man in the arena, the one who's falling, the one who's stumbling, the one who's bleeding and sweating. But if you're in the stands, you're not even on the ground. Who the hell are you to criticize, right? You're not actually doing anything with your life other than just watching. So if you're going to watch, then watch quietly. If you're going to get involved, then get involved. But don't just sit there and criticize and then claim you're doing something fun with your life or cool with your life. Anybody can criticize. Not everybody can get in the arena and actually do the work. So that's kind of what I want people to realize. And I want more people to get into the arena. I say that not to criticize the people who are not in the arena, but to try to hopefully inspire them to get in the arena and do something with their lives. And if they're not trying and failing, then they're just existing. And what the hell's the point of that?
Exactly. I feel like at the end of the day, it's just about asking yourself, well, what kind of person do I want to become? Am I happy with where things are at right now? If so, fantastic. You won the lottery. Stay status quo. But if you're not happy, even if there's some small areas of your life, well, why don't you try to figure out what could be better? And it doesn't always have to be like this big, scary thing. It could just be leaning in with curiosity to be like, well, this one area of my life is just not working for me. And I know what doesn't work. So let's look around and see what might work better, and just allow your curiosity to lead you to different places. And yes, change is really scary, but change is often better than whatever shittery you're dealing with right now in that area of your life that you're not happy with. I like to think that the discomfort of trying something different is always going to be better than just sitting with the discomfort that is guaranteed every day, whatever it is that you're working with. So yeah, I wanted to tack that on top, but I love what it is that you wrote here. I actually think it's awesome that we even specified 1 million people, because when we don't put a number or we don't try to quantify things, it's hard for us to feel progress towards the goal, because it's like, how do we know how close we are to it? And even when you do hit 1 million people, and I'm going to say when and not if, because it will happen, well, then we get to set bigger goals. Let's up that number, right? 2 million, 3 million, billion, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
reach more people. But it gives us milestones to hit and celebrate. I think that's one thing that also for the people that are in your audience, specifically people you work with, celebration is difficult. And I think it's good that we set milestones. So it's like, all right, the 1 mile mark, the 2 mile mark. So mentally, you're like, I'm working towards something and I can give myself credit and celebrate, because if it's this never ending goal, it's like chasing the sun on the horizon, you will never feel happy. So I like how we actually quantified this, so then we
Yeah.
can know how close you are in your progress in moving towards this goal.
Yep. I agree. 100%.
Yeah. Okay, now we get to the fun part, the eye candy. So after we kind of clarified what it is that we wanted to communicate about your brand, what your brand actually is, we worked on translating that into something visual that people can see. And this is usually the part that really trips people up. So I wanted to like deconstruct the process so people can kind of understand like what it is that we walked through step by step to get to the end product, which we'll show in the last few slides. So this was a fun exercise. This is always the fun exercise for me, where I get to ask you to do a scavenger hunt on the internet to see, okay, if we were to create anything for your brand, this is kind of like the blank check. If you could showcase yourself in any way, what would you want it to look like? And it's kind of like giving you permission to, like, if you're really nerdy, go down the rabbit hole and send me a whole bunch of nerdy pictures that you really like. And I was
Ideas.
curious to hear on your side what this experience was. Because for me, my job is like just to tell you, go on the internet, give you permission to find, show me some colors that you really like, grab a few images that you really like the vibe or energy of. And it doesn't have to make any sense whatsoever. It just has to be something that you like. I'm curious on your end, when I gave you this assignment to do this scavenger hunt, what went through your brain and what was the process and experience like for you to actually go on the internet and like search up and grab these images? I want to hear what your experience was like.
Yeah, so it was first of all, I got excited at first, and then as I was doing it, I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to send her all this stuff because I found so much stuff. I was like, oh, I can totally. I'm like, I think after sending like the eighth or ninth picture, I was like, am I overloading her with stuff? Because like I don't know how many supposed to send, right? So like I didn't want to send you
Yeah.
like a crap ton of stuff, and then I also felt like kind of like a douche because I was sending you some stuff that I created myself, and I'm like, I don't want to be that guy either, who's just like sending you my own stuff that I created. So I'm like, let me send you other
Yeah.
stuff that I got inspiration from and that I really love, that I align with. And so it was a fun exercise overall. But I think I definitely, we get in our heads because I'm like, I don't want to complicate things for you in terms of like being, I don't want to send you like just 1,000 pictures of stuff that I love. And then you'd be like, well, shit, now I got to sort through all this stuff. And it's going to take me like a year. And my brand, it's like 2027. We're finally launching the brand. Awesome. I finally got a chance to review all these pictures that you sent me over. And now we're going to talk about the branding side of things. So,
So funny. Honestly, the funny thing is the more pictures you send to me, the easier you make my life. Because what I do, honestly, like how I construct these mood boards, is I take a look at everything you upload into the specific folders I give you, and I click and drag everything into my design software, and I just organize it. I just tile everything so I can kind of see the bigger picture. It's kind of like what people do with a vision board, and I kind of just lay everything out, and then immediately it's very easy for me to start spotting patterns. So the more reference points I have, it's kind of like having data points when you're trying to do research. The more data points that you have, the more concrete your actual direction is. Because after even just the first few pictures, I'm like, all right, Drew loves dragons, mysterious heroic figures, oftentimes from some sort of like Japanese inspired. It's either like a game or there's some like mythology, and really likes it's often like a very dark theme. There are some pictures that you put in that were light colored, but there were a lot of them were more like dark and mysterious and strong and fierce and contemplative. Like the theme was actually very clear after I went through even the first few pictures. So what's fun is that I basically just curate, because sometimes there are some pictures that are very, very similar. So I just pick out the ones that are the most unique and then I tile them. And then what I do is I actually find different words to kind of capture use words to describe the vibe that is exuded through this mood board. So what I liked about your brand is that it had a very clear duality to it that we worked with when we were capturing and visually expressing it. So your brand is fierce. You see the warrior all over this, but it's not like brute force, like utter aggression, angry sort of fierce. It's like fierce but wise, where a lot of the figures that you chose, in the way that they're standing, in even the backstory of the characters that I'm actually aware of, they have a very they have history, there's background, and there's a lot of mystery that surrounds a lot of these characters, which is where I pulled the word enigmatic. And all of that I feel was very fun for me to work with when we actually dove in to make the design decisions to build out your actual brand. So it was fun for me on the other side to receive all of the images, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much to work with, and then just put this mood board together. So I actually thought that it was awesome that you also included some of your own stuff. And I think it's actually the most beautiful thing when people are proud of and stand behind the work that they created. So I was in my mind, I was like, heck yeah, like give me all this stuff that you like, that you created, that you like. Because if you don't like it, well, I mean, it's still good information for me to know what not to do. But like, if you do love your stuff, like show it to me, tell me, so then I can maybe create something similar but different with the personal brand that we create for you. So yeah, it was really fun creating this mood board.
I'm
Out
curious
of
one thing
that,
actually. Go back.
oh
Go back
yeah,
one thing. I'm curious about one thing
yeah,
actually. Obviously the 9 leadership logos. One, you know, it's mine. Did you know which other ones were mine that I created on here?
no, you're gonna have to tell me.
Okay. All right. So, okay, right under the 9 leadership logo, that image, that photo of the Chinatown, that's DC
Yeah.
Chinatown. I took that during the pandemic. That's a photo of mine.
No way.
Yeah.
This is a really nice shot.
It was pandemic time, so no one was around. It was awesome. It was like midnight on a random pandemic 2020 night. I like put the camera down and got a long exposure. But the funny thing about that is there were no cars on the road for like an hour, and then suddenly one car comes by on the left. If you see that like streak, because it's a long exposure shot. So it actually made it a much cooler picture. But it wasn't planned.
Wow.
That was really cool. The right side, so right above Tifa, that cloud looking thing, that's DC and Tokyo. I mean, and so I that's a composite image I made of 2 different things there. And then obviously to the far right, the nerd picture is obviously me. But below and above that, the 2 photos above that are both mine. That picture of the girl, the tattoo with the katana, that's a photo of mine that I made. I took with a model in Pennsylvania. Above that is Arashiyama, and then at the very bottom is Arashiyama as well, both in Kyoto. Those are photos I took too as well. So.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool. I did not even know that. And I think now the mood board becomes even more awesome, even though we've already finalized it. But I think it's so cool to know that a lot of these were your creations. And I mean, the hope is as you continue to grow and build your personal brand, you'll find more opportunities to showcase your work because that's just a part of who you are and what you do. So, oh, that's so cool. I'm discovering this live for the first time ever.
Yeah. It made it more fun. So.
Yeah. And I honestly feel like when it came to translating the mood and the vibe into colors, that's kind of how I usually start. It was very straightforward. I feel like for you, there was like, in my mind, there was one color and we just basically split it into a spectrum where it's purple, because I feel like blue is too corporate and too straight. It's just too straight of a color. And the cool thing about purple is that it's a mix of blue and red, which have very opposing energies. And this is like straight purple, leaning more towards blue than it is like the magenta-y pink side. So it is still more blue. So it's got that like mysterious feel to it. But for you, it was actually pretty straightforward. And we had fun picking out amidst all of the different shades of purple, which one you liked the best. I think I originally like chose this one at first. at least when I voted for it, I was like, maybe the lightning purple, just because it like really pops. But we actually ended up settling for this deeper, slightly deeper shade. I just like naming the colors different things. Royal amethyst. I just feel like it's got this regal feel to it. And it's like it's got a deeper, more mature feel to it that I think pairs really well with the mysterious side of your brand. You want to lean more and further into that. So I thought that was really cool. But purple, it was very straightforward when it came to
you knew it was going to be purple from the beginning, But it's interesting you said that because like, when you go back to what you said earlier about the brand changing over time, I think when I was younger, the lightning purple would have definitely been the one I chose. But as I've gotten older, as I've matured a little more, the Royal Amethyst is kind of more where I feel like I'm drawn these days. Definitely more so than the lightning purple. I still like the color. Don't get me wrong. Purple's still my favorite color in the world, but more towards the Royal Amethyst, more so than the lightning purple, which I would have gone for 15 years ago.
Yeah. And as we grow and evolve, we'll find ourselves being pulled towards different colors at different stages of our lives. And who knows, maybe at some point you'll lean into mysterious indigo. Who knows? Hit me up when you decide to change things up. But I feel like this really matches with the energy that you're leaning into right now for this stage of your journey. So I'm excited to just see a whole bunch of this color in my feed as I follow you. Now, every time I see something purple, I'm going to be like, Drew, like it's going to become instinctual to me. So that is very exciting. Now, before we talk about your logo, I want to take time to break down the individual ingredients that went into it, because oftentimes whenever people look at logos, there's a lot of things that were stuffed into this one graphic, and I think it can be overwhelming, like to kind of break it down just looking straight at the logo. So I actually have a slide where I break down some of the choices that we made or things that we were trying to communicate that we put into the final design, just to like slowly deconstruct the process for people, where the logo is obviously a combination of an icon and a font. And when it comes to the font choice, we had a good time picking out a font for you that was strong and bold and was very much a nod to just the inner nerd. It has a very comic book vibe to it, where it's like bold, but it's not super in your face. And that's why we picked the slanted font for your personal font. And then we had a variation of that for the Ronin community. And then for just the icon choice, I remember when I asked you the question of, were there specific visuals or themes that you wanted to incorporate into your logo? You listed out a whole bunch of stuff. You're like, I want to like find a way to incorporate like ikigai, but like my dog Hachi, and I love dragons and maybe swords. Like I remember madly typing all of the things that you listed out, being like, okay, awesome, you gave me a lot of ammo. Like there's a lot that I can run with here. But when it came to paring down the choices, we ended up paring it down to ikigai, which I think is just the core of what you do. So I'm like, we have to find a way. This is going to be the base. But we paired it together with a dragon. And obviously, you guys already saw the final product, but these are the ingredients that went in. And then for the icon choice for the Ronin community, it was just the silhouette of the Ronin, and then the placement of it to imply, like, yes, there is you. You're kind of at the forefront, but there's people standing behind you, and you're not alone. So these are like the ingredients that went into the boiling or the cooking pot. To wrong side. That led into this. So I had a lot of fun working on your logo. I literally, like, what I ended up doing is I kind of mocked up a few different variations, just using like graphics that I found online, just to kind of rough out the idea. And then at some point I'm like, I'm gonna have to customify the shit out of this. Like, I'm just gonna have to draw it. There's no way around it. Like, no tweaking or editing. So I actually had to. Where's my iPad? It's not here right now. But I literally have like this thing drawn on my iPad that I would be able to show you. Like, because I had to really like intricately draw the lines to have everything connect together. But I'm really happy with how they turned out. I'm not sure if there's anything specific you wanted to share with regards to the logos, but I'll pause on the screen just so we can admire how beautiful it is and how excited I am to like see it out in the world.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll talk while we go admire it, but I love them, honestly. I think that they capture exactly what I wanted to feel in this picture, in those photos, and those logos. Because I mean, let's start with the dragon one. The dragon is such a, I mean, I've always loved dragons as a kid. Again, huge nerd, love dragons, but there's a meaning behind it, right? That they're strong, they're protective, they're wise, and but they're extremely respected, right? And they're extremely they're in that space of like of the regality kind of thing as well too, right? But then incorporating that into the ikigai concentric circles, right? The way you did that was great. It was awesome. It looks really really cool, and I like the way that it comes together. Also, the Ronin community itself, the way that they come together, like you said, it's one person, but it's you have backup. You have backup essentially, right? You always have backup. You're never standing alone. You're alone when you want to be alone, but you also have the backup when you need it. And so it's kind of like the duality that you talked about before, which I think really really comes across. And I like the fact that it has multiple layers of meaning because of the fact that it is, they both have multiple layers of meaning because there are multiple things that are being said, and picture says 1,000 words, right? So I think these both do say 1,000 words, which I love. So I'm very happy with that.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to just see this sprinkled all over online. On the topic of dragons, I have this mini model that I painted a while back, and it literally
Nice.
just sits on my desk. So yay, dragon nerds unite.
That's awesome.
Just had to put that out there. Yeah. Okay. Now we get to talk about, because when people think about brands, they're like logos, colors, and then that's it. But I'm like, no. There's a lot more ingredients. A brand is an overall big picture, big vibe, and impression that is left with a lot of individual things. So the logo is one of the main things. It might be the prominent face of the brand, but other things that are subtle that I want to draw attention to that not a lot of people might be aware of is fonts. The fonts that you use actually make a really big difference. And I think I saw a post the other day that just to kind of showcase the example where there were two side by side posts that said the same thing. And I think the sentence was I will always be with you, which is very sweet. And then but it was used in two different fonts. One font that was very cutesy with like little hearts and it was bubbly, kind of like Comic Sans. I'm like, oh, like that's so sweet. And then the other slide was like this like it looked like it was like scrawled and scratched on the wall in blood. It was like one of those like horror that I will always be with you.
Yeah.
The difference that fonts make is huge. And it's one of those things that you only notice it when it's done wrong. When it's done
Yeah.
right, you don't notice it at all. But I wanted to draw attention to it just because of that fact. And here are just some of the fonts that we picked out for Drew's brand. That was really fun. It definitely has more of like that bold comic book vibe to it, and it's modern. It's not like super goofy or childish. It's got a mature feeling to it. But this is like just an example of how you can communicate a vibe even just with fonts, because even just text without any graphics at all, it still exudes a certain feeling. And this is another area where we could just be more intentional. So that's one thing that I wanted to put out there. But fonts do matter, guys. Like,
Yeah.
it's important to be intentional about it. Okay. Now we get to see what it looks like when we put everything together. Now, I know when we talk about branding, it could be this big picture, big concept thing, but when you actually anchor everything in, oftentimes the easiest place to see where all of these things are put together is on social media or on the website. So here are a few social templates that we created for Drew. The fun part was I literally just got to stalk you on social and pull out a bunch of your images off of like YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn, and just to kind of see what types of content that you put out and see if I were to add a layer of styling to it with the themes that we have for your brand, what would that look like? So this is kind of like a combination of all of the things that we talked about, where you see the color scheme, you see that all of the pictures have like a purple layer on top of it, all of the fonts, the overall feeling and the vibe that's exuded with the content. It's all pretty straightforward. So now no matter what content that you put out, whether it's got your face on it, whether it's you with other people, just landscape pictures or just straight up quotes or stock images, all of them have that same feel, which contributes to basically this thing that we call your brand. and that cross applies to your YouTube, which we're on. And in the thumbnails that we create for you, I had to find really fun screenshots of the most recent, the other interview that we did, and it's like find the screen grabs of the most like crazy facial expressions that we did during the interview, and then like put them side by side. But yeah, like the vibe also extends to YouTube and even the social banner. So this is just me showing eye candy at this point. I'm not sure if there's anything specific you want to add, but this is like the climax. This is like all of the work that we put in kind of gets showcased through a lot of these individual pieces.
Yeah, no, I think it speaks for itself. So I'm good with this.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's basically everything. And then I just have my contact info on the slide here. So I'll stop sharing my screen so I can actually see you properly. But that brings our little presentation to a conclusion.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rachel. That was awesome. I mean, like I said, that was an amazing walkthrough. It was great. It was great to showcase it and what you do and show people what branding looks like and the process you go through. Because it's, again, to the earlier conversation we had at the very beginning of the conversation, which was branding is a lot more than people think it is. And it's a lot more impactful than people think it is. And when you do it right, and then people will see just the color and be like, oh, that's Rachel's, or that's Drew's, or that's, whatever. And it can be really, really powerful. So I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure working with you. Anybody out there watching who's thinking, even considering getting a rebrand or getting a brand, period. I mean, if you haven't ever done it, consider doing that. Reach out to Rachel. She's amazing. She's great. She loves working with people, and she's fun to work with, as you've seen, I'm sure by now. And she's a very talented designer. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much, you covered everything that I wanted to cover there. And anyone who hasn't watched it all the way through, go back and watch it, because there's a lot of gold in there, a lot of nuggets that Rachel touched on that I think are extremely important for anyone, whether you're a business owner, whether you already have a business, whether you're thinking about starting a business, whether you just have your own personal brand that you want to go out and get jobs and post on social media or whatever. It's essential conversations to have, especially nowadays. The more and more things are going to be online. Zoom is not going away. Google Meet, whatever you use, Teams, whatever. That this world is not going away. The online world, and social media is here to stay, for better or for worse. So it doesn't matter how we use it, right? And why not make better use of it?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today. I feel like it was so fun just to kind of retrace our steps, because oftentimes branding, it can be, it's a winding road, and there are a lot of different pieces that we kind of have to gather to stitch together this picture. So this is, I'm going to emphasize, only the beginning. And for all of the people who are following you, I'm excited for them to witness how your brand grows and evolves, because as we grow as human beings, what it gets reflected on the forward facing side with the brand, that gets to change and evolve too. And one thing that I'll even share before we sign off for today is I feel like my personal brand is also going through an evolution where for the longest time, I've mostly shown black and white photos of myself. And I think that for the next evolution, I'm going to start showing them with a little bit more color. They're still going to be pink everywhere. I went to the far extreme of dyeing my hair pink, for crying out loud. But like the next evolution, and it's weird because on the front forward facing side, it seems easy just to switch these things up. But on the internal side, there's a lot of shifting that needs to happen with, do I feel comfortable with taking this next step, with putting this out there? This is like a big step. So emotionally speaking, there's a lot that happens before you even make the decision to shift something on the forward facing side. So for personal branding, it is kind of like an inward outward thing. I mostly just help people with helping them translate and communicate it on the outside. But for any internal work, please go talk to Drew. I cannot help you with that. That is not in my world. If you need support from people outside of your own head, I want to emphasize, yes, there's a lot of work that we can do ourselves, but sometimes we just need somebody that lives outside of our brain and all of the overthinking that tends to happen to help guide you through the minefields, where I know I myself am prone to stepping on mines all the time with a lot of my own habits and things. And I chase my tail around a lot. So for all of the internal shifts that need to happen leading up to you figuring out how you want to present yourself, go talk to Drew. He is amazing at that.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. That means a lot. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk through this today. And Yeah, I'm super happy with the brand. I'm excited to start putting out there, and everyone watching, you will be seeing a change in a lot of things, just in terms of branding and that kind of thing. We'll be slowly rolling that out and putting it on all the socials and everything and all my posts. But yeah, thank you all for joining. For those of you who joined today, and those of you who haven't joined, watching us later, thank you all as well. And like I said, reach out to Rachel, and you won't be sorry. So thanks again, Rachel. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My
See
pleasure.
you.